Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar this morning on dangers of non-compliance, 37.2 contractors, as well as plumbing contractors. Why is there a danger in terms of plumbing installations? This presentation obviously is brought to you by the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, as well as presented by myself, Chris, from OHSS Consulting. Now, if you take a look on the screen that you are currently looking at the moment, this is damage from an exploded geyser that happened in Kempton Park in 2015. Now, many more cases like this are happening every single year, and we will touch base on a case study that happened in terms of the plumbing installation that went wrong and caused considerable damage. In fact, even to the point of somebody dying because of working on an incomplete and incorrect plumbing installation. Now, why is there the need for having a webinar like this? And why did we invite all of those members from CIOSH to join us today to hear this type of webinar on plumbing installations when you are in occupational health and safety? Well, there is a need to expect more from our plumbing contractors. And by this, I mean, why should we require any contractor to take seriously the need for health and safety, not just during an installation process, but even ensuring the protection of the end user once the project is completed on site and the end user now takes over that installation? Well, let us consider an electrical installation. During the whole construction process, this electrical contractor that is at site has certain risks and hazards attached to his job. Obviously, electrocution, there is a potential for fire risk, and so we treat all electrical work as high risk. And one of the things that we really ask for is a COC, a certificate of compliance, to state that that installation was done according to a standard. Now, why are we requesting this from an electrical contractor? Well, it's because the risks that are present during the installation process still continue after the entire installation has been completed. So, for instance, the electrical cables that are placed into a building still have the possibility of electrocuting the end user. And so we require a COC to state that this entire installation has been done, obviously compliance in terms of SAN standards, as well as your electrical installations. But at the same time, it gives you peace of mind that this installation was done and signed off by a standard that governs the safety of that specific installation. So why are we not treating plumbers with the same type of request for compliance in terms of their installation? Or is it because we feel that plumbers are less of a risk when they're on site? And yes, the risks of plumbing installations and the risks of electrical installations do vary. They are different in times, they are the same at times. Plumbing installations and electrical installations both use tools. They both use portable electrical tools. However, the actual installation also has various risks and hazards attached to it, even after the installation is completed. So what do we mean? Well, a geyser installation must be treated with the same risk-based thinking, because once the installation is completed, and we did not insist on a COC, we might experience what we see in this picture at the moment. That is damage for an entire roof and building, the death of a person because of an incorrect plumbing installation. So this is the reason why we are having this webinar chat today. In fact, when it comes to health and safety, we do not need to explain the importance to any of you CIOSH members. In fact, we want to say a very big thank you to all of you OHS professionals out there, whether you're in construction, whether you work for government, whether you're in the corporate area, because we really appreciate the lengths and efforts you are putting in place to ensure health and safety in your various industries. And we cannot say thank you enough to CIOSH, the Institute of occupational health and safety for doing what they do for our industry. And as colleagues in the industry, we want to say thank you very much for ensuring that your companies, your homes, your sites, your customers, as well as your contractors work in accordance with the OSH Act as well as its regulations. But there is a trend that is becoming more and more prevalent. And this is because the risks during our audits are starting to show more and more. And this needs a little bit more action on the part of OHS professionals. So as plumbers listening in, we really appreciate that you've taken the time out to listen to this webinar. This obviously is coming from you as plumbers in the industry, the need to express our concerns to the health and safety professionals in requesting COCs or more stringent safety protocols with plumbing installations. And so this means for you as health and safety professionals, a bit more of a firmer stance on compliance to the OSH Act and regulations when it comes to these types of installations. Now, the purpose of the law, and we don't need to explain this to you, but for those of you who are not health and safety professionals, the purpose of the law is to protect people. And this means all people, not just those who are currently working in a specific environment, but those who may be exposed to the risks and hazards that we create. Now, as a plumber in the industry, while you are performing certain works, you create certain risks and hazards on the site. You might be doing excavation work. You might be working at heights. You might have hot works or portable electrical tools, hand tools. You will deal with waste or hazardous biological agents. You might even work with hazardous biological chemicals or hazardous chemicals. So all of this are specific risks and hazards attached to your scope of work while you're on site performing the installation. But that installation, if it is not done in accordance with the SAN standard, has a very real danger, a very high risk to the end user. And these are the ones that we need to protect. So yes, you might not cover this in your site-specific risk assessment, but what you are going to do is cover it in some sort of documentation once the installation is done. And this is where we come up with a certificate of compliance, noting that this installation has been done according to the SAN standard by an approved plumber, ensuring the safety not just while on site, but once the entire project is completed. So what is plumbing competence and what is the need? Well, first of all, it's very important, and there's absolutely no doubt that we need plumbers. They provide clean, hot and cold water. They provide running water, not only for us to drink, to bath, to shower, but even to cook with. It protects us from diseases. It provides a system to allow waste to be safely removed from our homes, buildings, and offices. So we could almost say that a plumber brings life to a building in the form of life-sustaining water and removes death from a building by taking disease, bacteria, viruses, and fungi out of the waste. We can truly say that a plumber helps us within the health and safety industry to provide sanitation, hygiene, promote health and well-being, as well as keeping us and our environment safe. So there is a huge need for you plumbers out there. In fact, there is a massive need for plumbers in the industry to be not just recognized, but approved and ensure that they work in accordance with the SANS standard for installations. So yes, water is life. Water can, though, become contaminated if plumbing is not installed according to standard. So our talking points today, and the reason why we want to discuss this information for you health and safety professionals, is to outline some of the dangers and hazards that are attached to incorrect plumbing installations, which means we might need to readjust our vetting procedure for certain 37.2 mandatory contractors. And yes, in terms of the law, we issue a 37.2, and we are going to discuss this at the end of the webinar. Does that take complete liability away from you as the client who is now behaving as an employer in their own right. Well, let us take a look at the dangers and the hazards. And this is after the installation is completed. So remember, we're not talking about having a plumber come to your site, issuing you with a site-specific health and safety file that includes a plan, a risk assessment, as well as your safe working procedures. We realize you are going in accordance with that while you are on site in terms of your health and safety specifications. And your plumbers are ensuring that they meet those requirements as well as adhere to your site-specific requirements. What we are discussing are the potential dangers of that plumber not doing it according to a SAN standard, aside from the health and safety on site, and then potentially having an adverse effect on you, your customers, and the end user when it comes to water contamination, as well as incorrect installations of geysers that could explode and become a bomb that could kill someone. So these hazards are after an installation is done. Now, whether you wash your vegetables or prepare your meal for your family, you pour a glass of cool running water on a hot summer's day, none of this can be done, including your morning cup of coffee, without, yep, you guessed it, water. And what would life be like if water was taken away from us? Well, we may say this is not likely in our area. We have plenty of water. Well, then let's ask this question. What if the bountiful amount of water you have was contaminated? This would cause a risk to you, your companies, your families, as well as any person that comes in contact with that cross-contamination. Now, diseases that are found in water, such as cholera, diarrhea, dysentery, hepatitis A, typhoid, polio. In fact, the list goes on with the amount of waterborne diseases, even Legionnaire's disease that is common as a gram-negative bacteria that is found in the ground around us. All of these are actually preventable. However, there's a global issue. There are 829,000 people that are estimated to die each year from diarrhea because of these diseases as a result because of unsafe drinking water and sanitation. The reason? Absent, inadequate, or inappropriately managed water and sanitation services. In other words, these services are not being managed by an approved, competent plumber. There is no maintenance plans in place, and the contamination of our water is constantly increasing. Now, how is this prevented? Well, for one, a qualified and trained plumber will know and understand how a plumbing installation needs to be done to ensure a clean water source, both at the source and at the endpoint where the water comes out. But what is the current problem? Why is there a need for a webinar like this today? Well, there is no specification to ensure that a plumber is qualified or approved as per industry specifics or instituted standards. Plumbers are generally screened by cost effectiveness. In other words, many companies today are choosing service providers based more on cost than on how upholding a standard in terms of ensuring SANS, Occupational Health and Safety Act, the various regulations, are implemented on site so that the outcome is not just an installation, but a safe, sustainable installation for yourself and the end user. Now, if a plumbing contract or a plumbing installation is not correctly installed or maintained by a certified plumber, the risk of cross-contamination is real. When a plumber is appointed to perform any work, do you request a competent plumber? And what does that mean? How are you going to determine what is competence? As well as how is a plumber determined competent on ensuring they eliminate and mitigate the risks, not just while on site, but when that installation is completed, so that it doesn't cause a risk to you, the end user, or potentially to your clients. Well, we've looked at cross-contamination. Let us look at some very, very real and dangerous effects of an incorrect geyser installation. Now, when geysers are installed incorrectly, they can cause massive damage to property, even put your life at risk, because the explosion is possible both with gas and electric tank water heaters, primarily those that are poorly installed and poorly maintained. So that gives us two reasons automatically why we should be looking for a qualified trained plumber, someone who issues us with a COC for that actual plumbing installation. And secondary, is there a budget as well as a health and safety specification on ensuring the maintenance of these items are being done? The same as normal maintenance on electrical work. We would never call out someone that is not an electrician to perform any works or maintenance on any electrical installations. Why are we not doing this with plumbers? You see, we should look for a qualified, trained, approved plumber to work on an installation that is approved. Maybe not the same person. You might have a different portfolio where you're branching out to include more diversified groups of plumbers, and that is fine, but look for someone who is competent, someone who is approved, because these two issues will raise much more concerns later on. And you will be able to avoid this catastrophe if you identify the contractor that is best suited to providing not just a cost-effective solution, but a compliant plumbing installation, one that is according to SAN standards, and then it is backed with the peace of mind of a certificate of compliance. Now, make sure you always use an IOPSA registered plumber and insist on a PRB, this is the Plumbing Industry Registration Board certificate of compliance for any repairs, replacements, or maintenance done to your geyser. The reason for this is you need to protect your family. You need to protect your employees and the lives of others from these dangerous installations turning into explosives. Well, let us take a look at a case study. We always want to ensure that we know and understand what is actually happening. Now, in 2015, you saw it, that opening picture where an entire building was almost blown up because of an incorrect installation of a geyser. Yeah, in 2006, a person died after a geyser exploded. And here's a little snippet from the newspaper article. And there you can see a man estimated to be in his 50s died on Friday afternoon after the geyser he was trying to fix exploded and sent him flying. Now, many people will stop there and say, well, that answers the question, isn't it? Yeah, you have someone who doesn't have any plumbing background or plumbing experience now trying to work on a geyser. No wonder this happened. Well, why was he trying to fix it? What was actually happening? And there you can see the consequences of this person's actions. Obviously, the emergency workers carrying a man out who had been shot through the roof when a geyser he was trying to fix exploded. Yeah, they are carrying him off the corrugated iron carport. The man later died in hospital as a result from his injuries. Now, this is happening, and it is continuing to happen because of the incorrect plumbing installations that are in some of our buildings, because we didn't realize then why these dangers are constantly occurring. So let us take a look then at the investigation findings. As a health and safety professional, you will know that we never point fingers, we never look for blame, and that is why many people would stop at the beginning of that newspaper article and say, well, the person trying to fix the geyser was at fault. Yes, to a degree, you could point that out. But as health and safety professionals, you know that we need to first do an investigation procedure. And when we investigate any incident or accident, we always go to or use a root cause analysis technique, whatever it is that you use. But that technique that you are going to use will help you to get to the source of the problem. And this is what occurred when the investigation was done into why that geyser exploded. Not why the person was working on it, but why it exploded. Now, in very short, the thermostat malfunctioned and didn't switch off. The reason for this not switching off, it caused the water to boil without a proper outlet. The geyser then exploded and killed Mr. Jan Hendrik Swanepoel. Can we see the importance of using a registered, competent plumber who would have known and understood that the outlet must be done in accordance with SANS? You will notice actually the article states that the thermostat may be to blame for the geyser blast. In fact, The chairperson of the Institute of Plumbing South Africa in the Free State, Mr. Gert Fraser, said that if a geyser is incorrectly installed, it could be a potential bomb. Now, highlighted in the red, it says 100 liters of water is equal to 1 kilogram of dynamite if the geyser explodes. So water inside a geyser, when it is overboiling, if there's not correct installations, especially with your inlet, outlet, overflow switches, according to your SAN standard, they will know in short how to ensure your geyser installation is according to that standard. A COC will then back you up and give you that peace of mind. But are we allowing kilograms of dynamite potentially in our workplaces, in the areas around us? Or are we mitigating this risk by ensuring that we vet the service provider and plumber before they come to site and ask and request for the correct procedures to be in place according to SAN standard, not just your Occupational Health and Safety Act, not just the regulations, but according to what is scope specific, that SAN standard that is in dire need to be looked at when installing a geyser. Now, we've looked at cross-contamination. We've looked at explosive geysers. These are all potential risks and hazards. Again, as health and safety professionals, we do not need to express to you the danger of not following a correct installation. Another very dangerous risk that we could be posing ourselves to, our loved ones to, our employers to, employees rather to, is scalding. Now, incorrect pressure, if the pressure is not correctly done on any geyser, then the residual dynamic pressure at the fittings may vary more than 20%. This is non-compliant. And if this is done, it could result in scalding or cold surges. Now, having cold water on you, there's no problem. But scalding is a form of thermal burn resulting from heated fluids such as boiling water or steam. Most scalds will normally be first or second degree burns, but there is a potential to have a third degree burn, especially with prolonged contact. Now, a qualified and competent plumber who knows the SAN standard, SAN's 10254 standard, will be able to assist you in the correct settings, ensure that the correct pressures are done. In fact, even if the hot and cold water delivery pressure to the water mixing components is not balanced, this is also not compliant. And SANS outlines the correct procedure for ensuring that this is done according to standard. It will prevent cold surges, but it will prevent the big risk of scalding. As we mentioned earlier, there is also the possibility of the genus Legionella. This is a pathogenic group of gram-negative bacteria that includes the species L. pneumophila. This causes legionellosis. This Legionella includes a pneumonia type of illness called Legionnaire's disease, as well as a mild flu-like illness called Pontiac fever. This thrives in water temperatures between 20 and 45 degrees Celsius. Now, what is the current temperature of your geyser? What is the current temperature of your water system that you have in place? Has it been checked? When last was it inspected? Has it been cleaned out? Legionella can grow and it will continue to multiply. And as soon as it comes out of the endpoint and is aspirated through the water, it will then sit on your lungs and it will cause one of these two types of illnesses. Either the mild flu-like one, Pontiac fever, which you will write off automatically as just having the common cold, but there is a potential for a more dangerous and a more deadly disease to grow in your body, and that is Legionnaire's disease. This is a pneumonia type of illness, and we don't need to tell you that pneumonia does kill a lot of people every year. And this is all just because water in our plumbing is not being maintained correctly. Now, what about looking at the SAN standard of waste removal or waste backflow? Now, backflow is the reverse flow of water, and substances can enter drinking water from a supply source other than the distribution pipes. So there's two types of backflow. There's back siphonage. This type of backflow occurs when there is a reduction in pressure in the water distribution system. In other words, there's a water break. Now, if you call out a plumber because you've had a broken pipe, there is a possibility that you might have back siphonage. See, the minute you have a burst pipe, a shutdown for repair, a high demand for water due to some sort of firefighting emergency, there is a potential for back siphonage. If your plumber does not know and understand the SAN standard, will they know to check on that when they repair a leak, when they perform maintenance, or when they perform the repair for you? Will they stop that contamination of back siphonage into your drinking water? What about the back pressure? And this happens perhaps when there is another form of pressure coming from your distribution system. This type of backflow occurs when there is greater pressure from the premise source. In other words, you've got a pump for a pond or a pool or an irrigation system, and that creates more pressure than the pressure coming from your actual water distribution. And this allows contaminated water then to access your drinking water. Is your plumbing set up correctly? Is there no cross-contamination of pipes back and forth between your distribution systems? And when you call a plumber to check on a leak, to perform your maintenance, to provide a repair, do you know the dangers? Well, if you don't, your plumber should. Again, they should know your SANS 10.25.4 standard. A registered IOPSA plumber, as well as one that has gone through the PRB standard and issued you with a COC, these types of plumbers will know the dangers. They will be able to give you reports, assistance, and maintenance plans that match the type of plumbing you have to prevent these types of dangers from occurring. All right, so we've looked at the dangers. We know that they are there. And as health and safety professionals, again, we do not need to explain what the OSH Act requires of us in terms of health and safety. You know the OSH Act, you know all 50 sections of the OSH Act, you know all 21 regulations that are attached to the working process for a plumbing, as well as your COVID compliance regulations that they should have. SAN standard, well, that is what you leave up to a plumber. But if we are leaving it up to a plumber, are we ensuring that that plumber is doing it? Do they know what their acts or omissions could cause to the potential harm to you, your employees, your clients, your customers, your family? Well, in terms of the OSH Act, Section 37.2, this is an act or an omission by a mandatory person, somebody who's appointed as a contractor. It states that the above provision of Section 37.1 will apply unless the parties agree in writing. And this is where we get a mandatory 37.2 agreement. And we sign this between yourselves and your service provider. This allows you to then agree in writing to the arrangements between yourself in respect to compliance by the contractor to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And in practice, this arrangement is known as the 37.2 agreement. Now, there are three purposes to a 37.2. First of all, it is to confirm that a contractor will be regarded as an employer in their own right. If that is the case, and this is agreed upon, then that employer, in acting on behalf of their own, will have to look at the OSH Act as an employer. And so Section 8, duties of the employer will be enforced, as well as continuing on to the employees, Section 14, ensuring that the employees have the responsibility in terms of health and safety. And this kind of indemnifies you then as a customer, ensuring that your service provider knows and acts in accordance with that legislation. But the second point is that it stipulates the obligations. So this is not something that we can take lightly. It's an obligation in terms of a legal contract, as well as attached to a piece of legislation in South Africa. It ensures that you, as the contractor, the plumber, has all the OSH Act applicable regulations in place when you are performing your plumbing. But can we see where the deficit is here? The missing part is what happens when my plumber leaves my site. Yes, we fully understand during the work, there are a lot of risks, and health and safety professionals, you are doing your job to ensure permits are in place, that the risk assessment is done according to specification and site-specific safety files, not generic safety files that we use from site to site, but site-specific, ensuring that we are mitigating the risks and hazards that are actually there on site. What about afterward? You see, even the third point to a mandatory 37.2 is that the contractor must apply with all of the on-site health and safety rules. Where does it state that when this contractor is finished, the handover of the project that now becomes yours as a health and safety professional looking after your client's interests, where is that risk mitigated? Should it not be part of the process? Should it not be like electrical installation, where a COC is issued stating that the work I have performed is in accordance with SANS standard? It is now checked and verified and backed by a certificate of compliance. Do you agree that this should be in place? Another question is, though, does this mandatory 37.2 agreement indemnify an employer? Well, let us take a look at what is said if a contractor incident occurs. If the evidence points toward the employer contributing, maybe not being directly involved, but contributing to such an incident, the employer may be convicted alongside the contractor. An employer in this term is you, the customer. You are the employer in this instance. You have an employer-employee relationship in terms of the law. Yes, you've signed a 37.2, making you a customer or client in terms of construction regulations, and a contractor, whether it be principal contractor, main contractor, or subcontractor. The relationship, though, is still one of employer-employee. Now, Section 9 of the OSH Act places a duty on employers to ensure that persons other than those in his employment who may be directly affected by his activities, the activities that he has asked a contractor to perform, are not thereby exposed to hazards to their health or safety. Employers must therefore ensure that contractor employees are not exposed to hazards to their health and safety, irrespective of the existence of a 37.2, and by extension, persons other than those in his employment. Vicarious liability is described in Neertling's law of delect. This is the strict liability of one person for the delect of another. Delect is a wrongful act that may cause harm. And I'd like to say a very big thank you to Louis Fourie, who is a senior associate at Labor, Check and Corporate Law, for this information. They are masters of environmental law. You may find them on LinkedIn under Louis Fourie. He is the senior associate of Labor, Check and Corporate Law. So thank you very much for that vital information, Louis, on assisting us to understand what is legal in terms of a mandatory 37.2, and are you creating or eliminating the risk as a safety professional signing these types of documentation? Yes, to a degree, the liability then moves over, the responsibility moves over to that contractor acting as an employer in their own right, but do not contribute to the potential risks and hazards that could expose others to a danger. And in particular, these dangers that we've just been speaking about: an incorrect installation that could be explosive, an incorrect or not maintained plumbing that could create cross-contamination, illness, disease in our water. We know that on site, the risks as well as residual risks of installation are always there. For any plumber, they might work with electrical tools. They are probably going to weld or solder, which brings in hot works, and they need to prevent or mitigate potential fires. We know that they are going to use power tools, and power tools have its own risk attached to it, even hand tools, as well as pollution while they are working. Yes, on site, we fully agree. Plumbers, and we hope you are listening, plumbers, and this recording of this webinar will be sent out to you as members of IOPSA. Please ensure that you are upholding your site-specific specifications of the client. Make sure the safety files you purchase, even if you're purchasing it from us, either you're getting it the template format from our OPSA or you're purchasing it directly from OHSS Consulting. If you are not purchasing a site-specific safety file, you need to take these templates and ensure that they are site-specific. Please constantly do that, and our OPSA will be at the forefront of ensuring you plumbers have what you need in terms of resources. Health and safety professionals, members of SIOSH, what happens when our plumbing contractor moves off-site? Are you allowing there to be a potential for explosions? Are you allowing the potential for contamination or even the potential for scalding injuries? You see, if a plumber works in accordance with the OSH Act and regulations and in an act of neglect does not work in accordance with SANS 1025.4, 1010.6, 1025.2.1, 1025.2.2, 10.400. We are not mitigating the potential risks after an installation is done. Yes, there is the risk of serious injuries and death even on site when an installation is being conducted, depending on the severity or type of plumbing you are doing, and your risk assessment will outline this. But none of us have a risk assessment for afterward. Let us treat this as the same in our industry. You see, the importance of health and safety in plumbing should be the foremost of all plumbing industries. The management of risk should be done before, it should be done during, but it should also be done after any work is done. Think about slide 1. We saw the potential explosion of an incorrect plumbing installation. We've seen the dangers of explosions, scalding, unhygienic or disease-infected water. That is why we have a SANS standard. That is why we have directed the plumbing industry to install according to these standards. So again, I'm going to ask the question, does the plumber know this? Do you as a plumber know this? Do you as a health and safety professional ask this of your plumber? How does IOPSA or PRB work? How do they ensure that SANS standards are met? Well, let us take a look at how this procedure works in terms of competence, being approved, and also being governed by an industry standard. Well, the question is the plumber competent to perform the specific type of plumbing installation? So not just a approved plumber, but let us take a look at someone who is competent in that specific scope. And as health and safety professionals, again, I don't need to explain to you what competence means. Somebody who is competent in a specific area. A person who is a health and safety professional might be competent in safety management systems in terms of OSHAS 18001, but are they competent as a 45001 ISO auditor? No, they know health and safety, but you see, you need to have an additional type of course done, additional certification, maybe additional experience in order to get to the ISO 45001 health and safety management system. Yes, it's both health and safety, but there are various aspects within health and safety, just as there are various aspects within plumbing. Now, Herman Strauss, a PRB compliance manager, explains this: the man in the street cannot be expected to tell one plumber from another or what his qualification is. And this can be to you as health and safety professionals, members of SIOSH. We're not expecting you to know, but PRB does. See, the Plumbing Industry Registration Board verifies this on your behalf. The plumber can still work even without PRB verification, but he's excluded from work where the customer demands a PRB licensed plumber. Would you not want, as a health and safety professional, that you've taken and dedicated hours, weeks, months, years to occupational health and safety management. You've done grueling tests, whether you've gone through the SACP CMP registration, whether you've done your technical, whether you've done international diplomas in safety management, whether you've done OSHAS 18001 for local health and safety management, whether you've done your ISO standards. Would you not want some sort of industry board to back you? Well, at OHSS, we certainly want that. And that is why we register with SIOSH. You see, we feel that when we attach ourselves to a company, an institute such as SIOSH, we are showing that we are wanting to set ourselves apart in terms of competence, compliance, and ensuring we have a high standard of health and safety. Would you not want that for yourself? Would we not want that from our plumbing contractor? See, in addition, and this is coming from Steve van Zyl, a technical manager of IOPSA, through the RPL program, many people who have no qualifications at all, but can do many plumbing tasks, are being mentored to join the official plumbing industry. You see, IOPSA is now assisting those who perhaps do not have this competence in assisting them because of their recognition of prior learning. The process, therefore, is highly inclusive as opposed to being exclusive. The average plumber, if he wants to have a business in the future, is going to have to learn the emerging technologies. And this is difficult to do on your own. So there are high value added tasks for which the consumer will want to know the plumber is qualified to install. The average plumber may think he can do solar installation, but our experience in compliance auditing suggests that it is a specialist activity that the typical plumber cannot do without specific training. And this again coming from Herman Strauss, a PRB compliance manager. So what does this mean for you as safety professionals? You are upholding your 37.2. You are ensuring that OHS is foremost on your projects, in your companies, or wherever your scope of work is. But please insist and require a COC from an approved plumber, someone who's maybe registered with the plumbing industry board, someone who has attached themselves to an institute of plumbing like IOPSA. So again, why should you use an approved plumber? I think we've brought the point home in terms of danger, not just on site, but the potential risks and hazards after an installation. Now, the Plumbing Industry Registration Board will encourage and monitor the performance of plumbers. They protect the health and safety of the community and environment, and they want to ensure integrity of the water supply and water or wastewater systems. In terms of IOPSA, they want to promote a unified professional plumbing industry through upliftment, development, education, empowerment of its members, and to protect the health and safety of the nation and environment. Well, really echoing the words of all of us health and safety professionals, are they not? Health and safety is at the forefront of both of these institutes. The OSH Act is telling us, provide for the health and safety of persons at work. This is what IOPSA and PRB are trying to achieve. The protection of people other than people at work. Well, this could be, by extension, end users of that plumbing installation. And then what about in connection with the activities from the person at work? Well, these risks that are attached to that is not just while we're on site, but even once the plumbing or the installation and project is completed. The SAND standard goes even further. It helps us to develop, promote, and maintain South African national standards, have a standardization of installations, promote quality in connection with commodities, products, and services. And finally, SANS always wants to render conformity assessment services and assist in matters connected to this. So again, there should be no doubt in our minds. And if you do the research again. Take a look at the dangers of non-compliant plumbing installations. Insist on a PRB certificate of compliance for any repairs, replacement, or maintenance done to your geyser. Protect yourself, protect the lives of others, protect your families by always using a registered and approved plumber. Well, that is our 45 minutes over. And we want to say thank you so much for joining this webinar. We really hope you enjoyed it. We do have a couple of questions, but first we just want to say a very, very big thank you to IOPSA, the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, for the vital information and assisting us with understanding risks and hazards within their industry and pointing it out to us as safety professionals so that we can put something in place to protect ourselves now and in the future. Thank you also to the Plumbing Industry Registration Board, or PRB, as well as to Louis Fourie, the Senior Associate of LLM, Labor, SHIC, and Corporate Law. And then once again, and a massive thank you to SIOSH, the South African Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And by the way, if you are a SIOSH member, please remember you can claim your 1 CPD point for attending this webinar. So again, to all of the members of SIOSH, just a very big thank you for what you are doing for our industry, as well as always supporting us as safety professionals out in the industry by giving us the needed tools and resources available and making it possible for us to do webinars like this. So once again, we want to say a very big thank you to each one of you for joining the OHSS Consulting webinar platform. Now, at the end of this presentation, we do have a few questions, and these have been populated due to the question and answer section that you do have. So, Richard, we are going to take your answer now as well. Please remember, we will email you these types of information, as well as the risk assessments that we are currently using. But the first question that came out is, where can I find IOPSA and PRB? So please, the same as SIOSH, you can go on there and look for people, registered health and safety professionals. It would work the same on IOPSA and PRB. So the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, you'll notice on the bottom right-hand corner, that is their logo. So that is what you're looking for when you are searching online. And you can go to www.iopsa.org. Please do not use .co.za. It is iopsa.org. If you're looking for the Plumbing Industry Registration Board, there is their logo. That is what you are looking for, the water droplet. This is prb.co.za, and you can get in contact with them via their various contact details. The second question being asked is, what is a COC? A COC, to answer your question, is a certificate of compliance. It is a document that is issued after an installation, an audit, and a verification is done in order to state that this installation has been done in accordance with a specific standard. Hence the term compliance, and this certificate would then give backing by a verified, registered, and approved installation person. In this case, we are talking about an approved plumber. The last question we have that came through, obviously we don't want to take too much of your time, so any additional questions we will be emailing through to you. The third question, how do I know if I am at risk? Well, an approved plumber, and please use one of those industries, the Institute of Plumbing South Africa or PRB, to go and find an approved plumber. They can come out and perform a plumbing inspection to ascertain if your geyser plumbing installation is according to your SAN standard and issue you with a report. So once again, a very big thank you. And what we want to ensure is, if you do want to check that a plumber is registered, I think this question, Shimon Lowe, if that is answered to you, an approved plumber, you will find them on the IOPSA website or even PRB. Again, all of this information, as well as the slides, the recording, can be made available to you. So we will send it through to you. Thank you very much, Borand. We will definitely be emailing this through to you. So just as a final note, a very big thank you once again to all of you as attendees. Thank you to the plumbers, the health and safety professionals. And if you do need to contact us, OHSS Consulting on info@ohss.co.za, or my cell phone number there, 071 875 2070. You can contact IOPSA by emailing them at info@iopsa.org. Please remember, it's info@iopsa.org and not .co.za, or go to their website, www.iopsa.org. You can also contact them on the number as shown, 011 454 0025. If you would like to get in touch with PRB, also email them info@prb.co.za, or you can contact them on the number as shown on the screen, 012 654 8245. So thank you very much. We are going to be ending the webinar at the moment. We thank you very much for your comments, your suggestions, as well as any information that you might have that can assist you. We are there to help. So we will end off the session now. Again, thank you very much to all of our attendees. We're going to then make the recording available to you in the next couple of hours.